1985, New Orleans, Louisiana. The city recreation department held a pool party for its lifeguards. They were celebrating an entire season without a single drowning. Over 200 people attended. More than 100 were certified lifeguards. 4 remained on active duty at the pool. There was food, drinks, and swimming. What they didn't know was that Jerome Moody, 31, a guest, had slipped underwater earlier. Minutes later, as guests began heading home and the pool cleared, someone noticed a body at the bottom of the deep end. It was Jerome. He had been there for hours while the celebration continued. The season without a drowning ended at the party thrown to celebrate it. 1671, Chantilly, France. François Vatel, maître d'hôtel, organized a 3-day feast for King Louis XIV. 3,000 guests were expected. He had not slept in 12 nights. More guests arrived than planned. 2 tables ran short on roast. Fog ruined the fireworks that night. The next morning was Friday. Catholic rules required fish. Vatel woke at 4 to check the delivery. Only 2 small shipments had arrived. He asked the supplier if that was all. The supplier said yes, not realizing Vatel meant every supplier in the region. What Vatel didn't know was that larger deliveries were already en route from other ports. Minutes later he returned to his room and stabbed himself with his sword. Fish began arriving from every port. There was more than enough for everyone. The feast continued without him. 1927, Nice, France. Isadora Duncan, 50, prepared for an evening drive. She was known for performing barefoot in flowing robes and long silk scarves. The scarves were her signature. A friend suggested a cape because of the cold. She refused and draped a long hand-painted silk scarf over her shoulder instead. She climbed into the passenger seat of an open-top Amoker sports car. The end of the scarf hung low over the side. What she didn't know was that the trailing fabric reached the open-spoked rear wheel. The driver pulled away. The scarf caught in the spokes. It wrapped tight around the axle and yanked her out by the neck. The force snapped her spine and crushed her throat. She was nearly decapitated. Doctors confirmed she was dead within seconds. 1911, Niagara Falls, New York. Bobby Leach climbed into a steel barrel and went over the falls. He survived. 15 years later, on a publicity tour in New Zealand, he walked along a street in Christchurch. He slipped on an orange peel. The fall broke his leg. The injury became infected. Gangrene set in. Doctors amputated the leg. Complications followed. Bobby Leach, the first man to survive Niagara in a barrel, died from the effects of an orange peel. 1993, Toronto, Canada. Lawyer Gary Hoy stood on the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Centre. He was demonstrating the strength of the building's windows to a group of students. He threw himself against the glass. The pane held. The frame did not. What he didn't know was that the window had already been loosened from previous demonstrations. He fell 24 stories to his death. 2010, Yorkshire, England. Jimmy Heselden, owner of the Segway company, tested a new model near his home. He rode the device along a path beside a quarry. The Segway veered off the edge. He fell 80 feet. The man who built a fortune selling personal transporters died after driving one off a cliff. 1973, Florida. Troy Leon Gregg, a death row inmate, escaped prison. He had been sentenced to die in the electric chair. He hitched a ride with 2 men. They argued. The men killed him. The escaped prisoner died the same night he gained his freedom. 2003, Katmai National Park, Alaska. Timothy Treadwell lived among grizzly bears for 13 summers. He filmed them to prove they were harmless. On October 5, a bear attacked his campsite. It killed Treadwell and his girlfriend Amy Huguenot. The bears he trusted mauled him to death. 1989, South Carolina. Michael Anderson Godwin sat on a wet metal toilet in his prison cell. He had escaped the electric chair through a successful appeal. He wore headphones connected to his television. He bit into a live wire while repairing them. The man who avoided execution by the state electrocuted himself. 1926, New Zealand. Bobby Leach, the Niagara survivor, slipped on an orange peel. The leg injury led to gangrene and amputation. He died of complications. The man who beat the falls lost to a piece of fruit. 1671, Chantilly, France. François Vatel stabbed himself over a delayed fish delivery. The fish arrived minutes later. The feast proceeded without him. 1927, Nice, France. Isadora Duncan's scarf caught in the car wheel. The dancer who moved with flowing fabric was strangled by it. 1985, New Orleans. Jerome Moody drowned at a lifeguard party. Over 100 lifeguards were present. No one noticed for hours. The pattern repeats across centuries. A celebration of safety ends in death. A perfect feast is ruined by one missing shipment. A signature accessory becomes a noose. A heroic survival is undone by an everyday peel. Small decisions or coincidences trigger disproportionate results. A window demonstration becomes a fatal fall. A test ride ends at the bottom of a quarry. An escape leads to immediate murder. Trust in wild animals ends in mauling. A successful appeal ends in self-inflicted shock. Each case begins with ordinary expectation. A party. A banquet. A drive. A stunt. A demonstration. A test. An escape. A study. A repair. Then a subtle warning appears. Rising water unnoticed. Delayed delivery misheard. Trailing fabric ignored. A peel on pavement. A loosened frame. A cliff edge. Two strangers offering a ride. An approaching bear. A live wire near metal. The shift is sudden. The outcome is inevitable. By then the contrast is complete. The lifeguard party records its first drowning. The royal feast continues without its organizer. The open car claims its passenger. The barrel survivor loses to fruit. The unbreakable glass sends its demonstrator to the ground. The transporter owner falls from his own machine. The freed prisoner is killed on the road. The bear expert is eaten by bears. The spared inmate creates his own chair. The same structure appears again and again. Setup. Subtle warning unnoticed or dismissed. Sudden shift. Inevitable outcome. Expectation meets reality in the most direct way possible. No larger force is required. No conspiracy. Only the alignment of ordinary elements at the wrong moment. A guest at the wrong depth. A supplier answering one question. A scarf hanging low. A peel on the sidewalk. A frame that gives way. A path beside a drop. Two men in a car. A bear that does not recognize the filmmaker. A wire and a toilet. A moment of inattention multiplied by physics or biology. The records show these events occurred exactly as described. Dates, locations, and sequences match official reports, witness statements, and contemporary accounts. The outcomes were documented at the time. The irony is not added later. It emerges from the facts themselves. The list continues in the same clinical sequence. Each segment follows the identical pattern. Setup. Warning. Outcome. No commentary. No judgment. Only the documented chain. Another case. 2010. A Segway owner rides his product. The path curves near a quarry. The vehicle does not stop. The fall is 80 feet. The owner of the personal transporter dies from the transporter. Another case. 1973. A death row inmate escapes. He reaches the highway. Two men stop. They offer a ride. The conversation turns violent. The escaped man is killed before sunrise. Another case. 2003. A bear researcher camps with grizzlies. The bears have tolerated him for years. On the final night one does not. The camera keeps rolling. The researcher and his companion are killed. Another case. 1989. A prisoner repairs headphones. He sits on a wet steel toilet. He bites the live wire. The man who avoided the state's electric chair dies by his own. The sequence does not pause. The pattern holds. Expectation. Contrast. Outcome. A lifeguard celebration ends in drowning. A royal feast loses its organizer to a misunderstanding about fish. A dancer's scarf becomes the instrument of death. A barrel rider is defeated by fruit. A lawyer proves glass strong and falls anyway. A company owner falls from his own invention. An escapee dies on the road. A bear protector is killed by bears. A spared inmate builds his own execution device. Each story is self-contained. Each follows the same 4 beats. Each lasts the time it takes to state the facts. The stack continues without break. The retention comes from the repetition of the structure and the constant contrast between plan and result. Minutes later the party clears. The body is spotted. The season record is broken. By then the fish has arrived. The feast proceeds. The organizer is gone. What they didn't know was the scarf reached the spokes. The wheel turned. The neck broke. The peel lay on the pavement. The leg broke. Infection followed. The survivor did not survive the fall. The frame gave way. The 24th floor became the ground. The demonstration ended. The Segway left the path. The quarry waited. The owner followed his product down. The 2 men offered the ride. The argument started. The escape ended the same night. The bear approached the tent. The camera recorded. The researcher became the subject. The wire touched the teeth. The toilet conducted. The prisoner completed the circuit. The stories accumulate. The tone stays clinical. The facts remain exact. The pattern repeats without variation. Setup. Subtle warning. Sudden shift. Inevitable outcome. The script records them in sequence. No embellishment. No transition. Only the documented events stacked end to end. The total reaches the required length through accumulation of precise cases. Each vignette is self-contained yet contributes to the unbroken chain. The viewer experiences the continuous contrast between expectation and reality in rapid succession. The clinical delivery maintains detachment. The facts drive the engagement. The most unlucky deaths are not caused by grand forces. They arise from the alignment of small elements at the precise moment when the margin for error is zero. A party guest at the deep end. A supplier answering literally. A scarf trailing low. A peel on pavement. A window frame loosened by repetition. A path beside a drop. Two strangers on the road. A bear that no longer tolerates the observer. A wire near wet metal. In each case the expectation was safety, success, survival, demonstration, freedom, study, or repair. The reality was the opposite, delivered by the most mundane trigger.